everybody, and welcome back to On the Diamond into the Deep. As always, I am your host, Mahal, and we are back after a long while. It has been a few months since we recorded our last episode, got that out in about January, I think. But we're back now. It is currently April 28th, and we are into the thick of the season. I will be recording every weekday for the next 4 weeks. We'll be rocking and rolling. But for now, there is a lot to talk about, even just from this weekend. So we'll start with that today. We'll talk about the 3-game series with the Marlins, and we'll talk about both the Logans, Logan Evans and Logan Gilbert. And that will do it for today's episode. Thank you all for joining me. If you haven't already, make sure you follow on all your social media platforms at Diamond and Deep on all of those. And if you're listening to just audio on Spotify, you can get video as well on YouTube. And make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, 5-star review, all those things, all that jazz. But for now, let's get into it. Game 1 against the Marlins. And the Mariners coming off 5 consecutive series wins. Head into Game 1, I think there was, at least within me, hope for another series win, hope for maybe even a series sweep, and the Mariners looked well on their way to winning Game 1 after 3 innings. They were up 1-0, but the bats seemed to be rocking and rolling as they have been most of the season, and especially over the past 2-3 weeks. And you look to be rolling heading into the top of the 4th when Logan Gilbert doesn't come back out. Logan Gilbert was perfect through 3 innings. He leaves with right forearm tightness, and that is his throwing pitching arm. So there was concern there immediately as soon as he wasn't in the game. It took us about an inning and a half to find that out. And by that point, the Mariners were barely in it, but they were out of it pretty quickly. Casey Lawrence came in. He had a couple clean innings, and then he looks to be on his way to a third one. Dylan Moore gets a little routine ground ball right to him, squeaks between his legs, off his glove. An error that lets the inning continue, lets it run on, and the Mariners give up 6 runs in that inning, and that sort of took out that game. And I think that just sort of all the air was sort of taken out of their tires. And that's you can't blame them. That's your ace going down with an injury, and then a tough error that leads to a lot of runs all in one inning. So it is understandable why that happened. It was frustrating, but that's not something that I'm going to blame them for at all, or even really be frustrated by. That's just a game that is going to happen every once in a while. You're going to wash that game, sort of move to the next. And heading into Saturday night, I was hoping that they would be able to do that, but I wasn't quite sure. That is a big loss. Logan Gilbert, and he went on the IL on Saturday, so you're coming into that game with maybe some emotions about that. Baseball's an emotional game. You have to be able to play through these emotions. That's going to sort of happen. But in my opinion, I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to bounce back Saturday. The Marlins aren't a very good team, luckily, respectfully to the Marlins. But for me to be able to sort of see the Mariners bounce back in the way that they ended up doing on Saturday was really, really good to see. And not just the bats, but also Luis Castillo bouncing back and having a good start, even if it was against a not very quality Marlins lineup. 6 innings of 1 hit, no runs, 5 Ks is no joke. Doing that against a major league lineup is no joke. So to see him do that after a couple tough starts for him was really important to me, really important to, I think, a lot of the fan base, and just really important in general for his confidence and all of that. But Saturday, obviously, like I said, bounce back game. And you start off real hot. Clean inning in the first inning for Castillo, La Piedra, before Julio finally does something good. And I think Julio has been a source of frustration for me. He makes it difficult for me to even watch the Mariners because his at-bats just look non-competitive. A lot of the times he's getting fastballs up and in that are 95, 96 miles an hour. It looks like it's like 105. It's just getting blown by him. Or he's taking one right down the middle because he's looking for something else, trying to lay off a slider. And a lot of the times he's getting sliders away, and he's just swinging and missing at him, or he'll get one that's called for a strike that clips the zone, and then he waves and misses at one in the dirt, way in the other batter's box, and it's a lot of frustrating at-bats. He's not seeing a lot of pitches. He's not making a whole lot of contact. He's striking out quite often, popping up, rolling over, all that chaz. And I think you can sort of see some of that frustration building within him because, he doesn't want to be that guy that's struggling. He doesn't want to be the guy that is causing frustration in himself, for his team, for his manager, for his fan base. He wants to show that he's an MVP caliber player. And we know that he can be that. He showed that in his rookie year, but he hasn't been able to show it since. So the question that remains is, when can he show that, if he can show that? When will that shine through? And he has to get through these couple years where it's really just been the same problem over and over and over again. And if he can get through that, and he can show that he can lay off some of these sliders away, that he can search for his pitch as that first swing, that first strike of an at-bat, he can work an at-bat, he can foul balls off, he can make the pitcher throw pitches. And for me, it's even more frustrating when he's in the leadoff spot. I mean, you look at Sunday's game even, and we'll get into Sunday's game in a second, but you look at Sunday's game, and first at-bat of the game, Julio's leading off, and he takes and he gets a fastball, or I think it was a slider. He gets a slider, and he just pops it up. And, I think for me, as a leadoff hitter, you have two main jobs. One, get on base and set up everyone behind you. And two, see pitches and set up everybody behind you. Those are your two jobs as a leadoff hitter. And for me, Julio right now, obviously not a leadoff hitter because of his statistics and all that and what he's doing. But just the type of hitter he even is right now, he's not really a leadoff hitter. He's not seeing enough pitches. He's not letting the dudes know behind him what is that guy throwing. Does he have a slider that has some break that you haven't seen before? Is that a little bit more spinny than maybe normal? Is it a fastball that has a touch more rise? Whatever it is that he's seeing in an at-bat, you want your leadoff guy to be able to see those things, identify those things, relay those things to the rest of the lineup, to the dude behind him and behind that guy, dude on the on-deck circle, dude in the hole, dude, all of that, the entire lineup, the entire team. Get those things rallying through the dugout. That's part of your job as a leadoff hitter. And not only is he not getting on base, but he's also failing to do that. So he's failing both of his jobs as a leadoff hitter. So if I'm Dan Wilson, I'm not hitting him leadoff. I understand you want to hit him high in your lineup, but he's just not that guy right now. And I don't know what the solution is to that. Is it moving him down to the 5-6 hole? Maybe it is. But also, is that going to fix him? I don't know. Often I do like seeing him in the leadoff spot, but when he is swinging at the first pitch more often than not, and sometimes even making contact with that and just rolling over, grounding out, that's not something you want from your leadoff hitter. But not to sit on Julio and just trash on Julio. Like, that's not something I want to do, But it is something that needs to be mentioned, needs to be talked about, because, well, in the midst of all this positive stuff going on with the Mariners offense, Jorge Polanco, Miles Mastrobuoni, Ben Williamson, Dylan Moore, Cal Raleigh, just to name names, J.P. Crawford, all of these guys really just crushing the ball. Here sits Julio Rodriguez, and he's just a frustrating at bat. He makes it difficult for me to watch because I know what he can do. But you see him just strike out and struggle in the same way year after year, at bat after at bat, game after game, month after month, week after week. It gets frustrating, and I'm sick of it at this point. Watching him do those things repeatedly it's annoying. But again, not to sit on that. Mariners do win that game pretty handily, 14-0 after Julio and Polanco go back-to-back. And the Mariners dropped 6 runs in the first inning, batting around. Castillo again, 6 one-hit scoreless innings with 5 strikeouts. And the Mariners won 14-0. Just in terms of box score stuff, Ben Williamson 2 for 5, Cal Raleigh 1 for 1 with 2 walks before he was pulled in place of Garver, who hit a homer off a position player. Gotta do what you gotta do. Raley 3 for 3. Polanco 2 for 3 with a walk. Troy Taylor had his clean inning after being called back up. 1 hit over an inning for him. Just an overall really fun, good baseball game for the Mariners, and that was needed after the news of Logan Gilbert. And a tough loss the night before. The Mariners needed to bounce back. They did bounce back in a very big way, and that led them to a rubber match on Sunday, which they needed. Just win series. That's the motto, for me, of what this team needs to do, of what any team really needs to do. You just need to go and win series. So for me to see that happening and the team being successful with that it's a positive. They had 5 straight heading into this series. Sunday, they get their 6th straight. Logan Evans makes his debut. He gives up 1 run in the first inning off a little homer, middle. I don't actually know if it was a 4-seam or a 2-seam. I believe his 4-seam has a lot of run similar to what the sinker that he has looks like, just from when I was watching yesterday. But let's see. I believe it said it was a four seam, but it had a lot of run on it, so I'm not sure. Augustine. It was a sinker. Yeah. So it had a sinker. It had 19 inches of horizontal run, arm side. And it was about middle, and that's going to happen. He said that's going to happen. People have mentioned that it will happen. But to leave that first inning sucks. That's your welcome to the league, welcome to MLB moment for him. But he then bounces back real quickly, gets a ground ball out for out number 3, gets out of the inning. We head to the second. The Mariners down 1, going bottom 1. Cal Raleigh steps up to the plate, and he hits his 10th homer of the season. The dude is rolling. I mean, watching Cal Raleigh has been a blast this year. There are obviously frustrations with him at the plate, but that's just because he's not hitting for high average, and everything else that he's doing is really amazing. The team leadership that he has, his defense behind the plate, his framing, the strikes that he really does steal for these pitchers. It's something that's not mentioned a whole lot, but he does steal strikes a lot for these pitchers, and that's something that when the strength of your team has been and is your pitching, you need to get that. You need that to happen. You need to steal strikes. You need a catcher that is going to be able to lead that pitching staff. And to have Cal Raleigh back there has been fantastic. And obviously he got extended, so he's going to be doing that for a long time in a Mariners uniform. But it's very exciting, for me at least, to see the guy that Cal Raleigh has become. He's become the best catcher in baseball so far this year. And that is really, really exciting. That's something that is great to see. I think this is a guy that you brought up. He's a homegrown talent that came through your farm out of college. And to see the dude he's turned into being is just fantastic. I remember watching him down in Everett, watching him play in Arkansas, seeing all the stats, West Virginia, all those different teams after he was drafted. It's really good to see, and the pitchers love it. Everyone loves it. And now he's tied for the league lead with 10 homers. Last time I checked, I believe he still is, unless something happened today. But Logan Evans, 2 quick innings, found his groove. And the Mariners 6-2 lead when he's pulled after 5 innings. So a good start for him. 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, both were earned. 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. He was getting a ton of ground balls, but we'll get to him in a second. Trent Thornton comes in the 8th. The Mariners are up 6-2 at that point. He gives up a 3-run bomb in the 8th to make it a 1-run game. He gets out of the inning, and Munoz comes in with a huge save again. And Munoz has been lights out. He's been the best closer in baseball, no doubt, in my opinion. And I think that to see him do that, even without really using that kick change that we talked so much about spring training, it's good to see, and it's something that has been huge for this team. They would not be in the place that they are at 16-12, I believe, if it weren't for Andres Munoz. They would definitely not be 4 games over 500 and in first place in the AL West. But they are, and that's partially due to Andres Munoz, as well as a lot of the lineup, and Ben Williamson. Ben Williamson was scratched yesterday with back spasms. Not a huge worry at all. Obviously not an IL stint. Just give him a day off. They have another day off today before 2-game series, and then you get a second day off this week on Thursday. So it's all good. It's not something to worry about if you are the Mariners, if you're a fan. But it's something to mention because it happened. And Ben Williamson has been huge for this team. And how long will that last? I don't know. But we'll talk about him later this week. There will be a point where he sort of gets exposed, I'm sure. But to see just him sort of slash the ball around the yard, super flat swing when you watch it. If you haven't thought about it when watching his swing, watch it swing. And just the bat path is so flat through the zone. It allows him just to hit line drives. And that's why he hits so many singles, doubles. And it's awesome to see because that's a type of guy that the Mariners haven't really had. Haven't had a guy that can do that as well as play really good defense at third base. But that's what Ben Williamson has done since coming up, and he's been huge. Now, into the Logans. We'll begin with Logan Evans. Obviously made his debut yesterday, at the time of recording this. And that is really, really good to see. He had a great start, 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 earnies, 3 walks, 3 Ks. I did just say that line, but we had to throw it again. He looked great. There's not really any other way to put it. He threw all 6 of his pitches at least 9% of the time. He has a 6-pitch mix. He has a lot of pitches. It's really fun to watch to see how he sort of just moves the ball around. Yesterday he threw 24% cutter, 21% sweeper, 21% sinker, 17% changeup, 9% curve, 9% fastball. And if you want to know where he's throwing those, that curve and that fastball and change, those are almost exclusively, if not exclusively, against left-handed hitters, versus the other 3 are mostly against right-handed hitters. The cutter is used against both pretty evenly, just from looking at it. The sweeper and the sinker are used pretty exclusively for right-handers. But that's just yesterday, obviously. That can change game to game. The movement on those pitches is also going to change game to game, but the movement on a lot of these pitches is really fun to look at. For me, the one I want to talk about the most is the cutter. His cutter is very slidery to me, just watching it, but it's in a very positive way. He's able to throw it for strikes. He's able to get swing and miss with it. And that's something that he's going to need to be able to do. He gets ground balls as well with it, which is also really important. I was comparing it to Logan Gilbert's slider, and just in terms of movement profiles and all of that. And it's very similar. I thought this was really interesting. Just in terms of velocity, vertical and horizontal movement, it is very, very similar. Gilbert's slider averages 87.8 miles an hour this season. Evans's cutter averaged 86.7 miles an hour yesterday. In terms of vertical drop, vertical movement, whatever, 34.8 on Logan's, on Gilbert's. I'm gonna have to get used to this. 34.1 on Evans, so very, very similar there. About a 1/7 of an inch there in terms of difference, which is a difference, yes, but it's very slight. And then you talk about horizontal, and Gilbert's is 1/2 inch of horizontal versus Evans's 9/10 of an inch of horizontal, so also very similar. So you can see the movement profile on these pitches is very similar. Now the spin rates are pretty different. Gilbert's slider spin rate is about 1850 versus Evans's yesterday. His cutter was 2345, so it's going to be a little bit more spinny in order to get that movement. But just simply in terms of the movement profile, very similar pitches. Very, very similar pitches, which means if you watch Logan Gilbert a lot and you look at how he uses his slider, that is a way that Logan Evans can sort of learn from him and use that cutter in maybe a similar way, maybe a different way. But Logan Evans he has some really filthy stuff. The cutter, the sweeper, the sinker are all filthy. I saw him throw a changeup as well yesterday that was pretty filthy. He's not gonna throw extremely hard. He averaged 92.9 on his fastballs yesterday. But that's fine as long as you're getting the ground balls. And the sinker yesterday was able to produce the ground balls that it needs to produce. He got 50% ground ball, and that's going to be really, really key for him, because that's how you're going to get outs as a rookie. You're not going to blow stuff by people more often than not, because that's just kind of how it works. But to see him get all those ground balls, it was exciting. And it was a positive. And to see him have a good start, even if it is against the Marlins, that is your major league debut. And that's a really positive thing to see. His arsenal also, I think, makes it possible for him to continue that success because of the way the sinker moves. The amount of horizontal movement on that sinker allows him to sort of manipulate it and force ground balls and all of that jazz. In terms of the sinker's movement profile, if that's something you're interested in, vertical break wise, 24 inches. In terms of horizontal, it has 19, average 28 vertical wise on the sinker and 19 horizontally, and that's going to be to your arm side, so that's going to move down as well as horizontally towards the arm side, so in and sort of like a back footer to a right-handed hitter, if that makes sense, just not quite as much movement. But Logan Evans looked really, really good yesterday, and it was something that was really exciting to see. In terms of how that sinker and his whole arsenal really looks compared to how they look with the rest of the league, like averages in terms of movement profile, that sinker is going to be a little bit more sinkery, which is probably why he got ground balls. It's going to have more vertical drop versus an average sinker. And it's also going to move a tiny bit more to the arm side, but that's mostly just on the right side. So that there's going to be more horizontal movement than average, but it's still fairly average there. His four seamer is interesting. It also has a lot of arm side run, not quite as much as the sinker, obviously, but it is more different than, say, the sinker is compared to the average. So like an average four seamer in terms of vertical and horizontal movement is slightly different than, say, Evans's. Whereas the sinker, it's somewhat similar. It's just mostly the difference is vertical versus mostly the difference with the four seam is the horizontal break. The cutter, again, is really interesting. It's very different from an average cutter. It has a lot more drop on it. It's going to just sort of sit in there, which is why it looks a little bit more like a slider to me. But obviously you can make your own opinion on that if you watch it. The sweeper has a ton of horizontal movement, and it is very dependent on the one he throws. And because of that little bit of an inconsistency with that movement, it could get left over the plate every once in a while, and it's going to get hit and hit hard every once in a while. But that's also going to happen all of the time. That's sort of just how baseball is, you know? But again, Logan Evans, a really, really good start. We'll be excited to see him again soon. He should pitch Sunday, I believe. He should pitch again Sunday. It's a positive to see the success with which a lot of these Mariners starters are having. Yeah, so Sunday against the Rangers, that'll be a real big test for Logan Evans. That's a good hitting Rangers team, a 15-13 Rangers team. That's a game behind the Mariners right now, and that's a big series already this weekend. So let's be sure to be watching that, watching what he does, watching what that series is. That'll be a big one. Now, unfortunately, we do also have to get into the other Logan Gilbert, who was pulled again after 3 perfect innings Friday night with right forearm tightness. He was then IL'd the next day with a mild grade 1 flexor strain. And while that is not worst case scenario by any means, it's also not great, especially considering that is a flexor strain that often leads to Tommy John. Cover your ears. That happens, I don't want to say more often than not, but that does happen. It happened with Robbie Ray just a few years ago with the Mariners. The difference there is that Robbie Ray really did not bounce back well. Logan Gilbert apparently already is bouncing back decently well, but he is shut down from throwing for 2 weeks. We will see sort of what this timeline looks like as time passes, because this could go any which way. This could be anywhere from he's back throwing in 2 weeks, taking it slow, and then he's back in a couple months, or a month and a half, to he needs to then go get surgery and he's out indefinitely, to he's back for the last half of the season. He's back in July, August, or is he back at the All-Star break? It really depends on just a lot of stuff happening, and there's not a lot of unknowns there. But personally, I'm going to think more positive, and I'm thinking probably around the All-Star break is when he's back. But it is something that you should be aware of. It's something to be concerned about, but it's not something to be losing your mind about. And the main reason to be concerned about it is because Logan Gilbert is a huge factor in this team. He is your ace. He's your opening day starter. He is your best starter. And he is going to be missed. So that is important to think about, important to know. And he's a guy that really they're going to need for pennant postseason run. And if they want to make the playoffs, he's a guy that they desperately need to be in that rotation, heading the rotation, being the ace of this team. And hopefully he will be back soon, but the team is definitely going to be cautious. They're definitely going to be careful with him. They're not going to rush him by any means, and I hope that people don't start asking for that to happen. But we have seen the Mariners are pretty good when it comes to these starting pitcher injuries in terms of being careful and getting them back when they need to be back. But obviously, the thought of Tommy John is terrifying. And with the CBA negotiations in 2027, that would be really terrifying because he could be out for a really, really long time. Maybe he gets a little bit of time in 2026 if that were to happen. But you're already end of April here, and it's hard to know what's going to happen. And the part that just sucks with it is that as soon as the lineup's rolling, you start getting these injuries, and it's brutal because you look at these past couple of years, you had the rotation fully intact, fully healthy, pretty much the entire season, especially last year. You just couldn't figure out the lineup. But if you had thrown that with this lineup, last year's rotation with this year's lineup, and you're golden. You're rolling through the American League. You're steamrolling teams. And it hasn't quite put itself together yet this year, but there's still time. George Kirby's looking like maybe about a month away right now. Through a pen on Friday, should have a live BP apparently this week, and then hopefully rehab after that if that all goes well. Obviously, that will take multiple rehab starts, which is why maybe a month-ish. But do not put a hard deadline timeline at all on that. But thank you guys so much again for listening to today's episode. The Mariners are off today. They'll be back tomorrow with I believe it's a night game against the Angels. Bryce Miller will be on the bump, so we will talk about him tomorrow. We will talk about that whole series tomorrow. We will preview that and talk more tomorrow about JP Crawford, Jorge Polanco, and the success that they've seen and maybe why they've seen it. We'll look at their Savant pages. We'll look at their Fangraphs. We'll look at the differences between this year, last year. And obviously for both of them, there is a big difference in terms of their healthness and just them being healthy. That's a big difference. That's a big one that plays a role. But thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. Again, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, follow, all of that jazz at Diamond Deep on all the social media platforms. Again, like, follow, subscribe, all of that jazz. And thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow. But for now, as always, go M's and peace.